All right, shalom. So this update is just to give everybody on my YouTube channel and what have you a little bit of an update as to how things work in our country, right? So me, I'm the church. Church is people, not a place. So whenever the state or federal agency tries to attack the church under color of law, that is a crime. It's criminal negligence. Doesn't matter what your interpretation, what your opinions are. If you think I'm delusional, if you think I have blah 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 blah, it doesn't make a difference, right? All the yakety smackety, all the thoughts in your head don't make a difference, because that attacking somebody on the religious principles is a hate crime under Title 18, Section 249, as well as under New York State Penal Code 485.05, right? So the church is the people. Again, the Bill of Rights are modeled after the Ten Commandments, right? So the First Amendment is the first right given to the people. Freedom from establishment from religion, as well as freedom of exercise. Exercise means to put it into action, right? So when the government tries to say that my acts are licentious, which means depriving somebody else of their rights, and they can control that conduct, they have to produce a victim, right? They have no compelling state interest. They don't have any rational ideologies that can validate attacking me under color of law, right? So to put it in perspective, going through all the cases that are on my website, mycases.governmentwatch.us, if you want to find out the information. So you go to the first case, which is in the town of Leroy. This was pre-COVID, and what happened during that interaction is quite simple. I accidentally struck a police patrol vehicle that was parked at the end of Royal Apartments, where I live, at monitoring traffic. It was completely accidental. It was based on a variety of circumstances and what have you. Took full responsibility and everything else. It was issued a citation, however, by the Genesee County Sheriffs in regards to it. And I'm like, well, one, you weren't an observer of the circumstances, so why would you be giving me a citation? Secondly, I didn't question him directly on that. What I did question him directly on was the principle that he cited me for a pass on right. So I was passing the patrol vehicle on the left. We're both facing in the same direction. He was on the right-hand side of my vehicle. I was going around him on the left-hand side. I couldn't pass him on the right, because if I were passing him on the right, I would have been in the weeds hitting trees. Didn't make sense. So to me, that was perjury in and of itself. Now, at the time, obviously, me being a law-abiding citizen as much as possible in regards to anything, unless it conflicts with my religious values, obviously I'm going to be dismissive of it, right? So there's nothing that I was dismissive of historically, but traffic court has always been under my thumb for a variety of reasons. So it's like, okay, so in this case, it's a matter of perjury, right? And especially considering in the historical context where places of employment utilize the same level of conjecture to marginalize me, terminating my employment under false pretenses, I have a very keen observation of what perjury is, right? People bearing false witness and what have you, even historically going throughout my entire life. Never cared for a liar, right? That's what perjury is. It's all a matter of lying under oath. Never cared for it. That's why I didn't care for traffic court in a variety of ways, is because it favored perjury in my perceptions. Still does, and it obviously, most prominently, you see what's happening with me in the court of law, it's all a matter of perjury. Not only do they want to force me to commit perjury, but they likewise commit perjury with impunity, right? So in this case, because it was a matter of perjury and we have this pre-COVID, and with my historical context with not only traffic court as well as places of employment, I put my foot down. Plea offer got sent to me in the mail. I declined it, right? I'm going to take it to trial. First time I ever went to trial, technically speaking, in regards to anything like this. It's like, all right, it's a matter of perjury. Why would I be? It's stupid. I took responsibility, filed the claim with my insurance company. I didn't ask them to do it for me or anything like that. I called the insurance company. I make the claims like I always do, right? For the person. If I cause injury to person, somebody, despite the insurance company always saying, don't say that you're at fault, don't say that you're at fault, I'm at fault, right? That's a matter of responsibility. So it's all right. So I filed the claim and everything else. They got compensated, should have been, for everything through the insurance, right? Simple context. So proceed to court, and because I'm alienated at that point with my unalienable rights, it's like, okay. So I asserted my first court was already adjourned technically, right? We had to wait about another 20 or 30 minutes for the deputy to show up to court, right? So that in itself, the case should have been dismissed because the people weren't ready. He wasn't there, and I had to wait for him to be there when he should have been there. So that's not my fault. The case should have been dismissed just based on that. So I waited because love is patient, love is kind. I had all my materials, my Bible and everything else. Now, if you're going to swear on a Bible in a court of law, I'll swear on a Bible, right? And that's the whole context. And the judge asked me when he was swearing me in to state the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Yep. And on Bible. I don't know my exact terminology, but that's basically what it was. And he accepted it, obviously, as he would. So that said, I went into it. Right, I started quoting scripture and what have you. Now, keep in mind, it was a little bit off-center because it's the first time I've ever argued my First Amendment immunity in a court of law. And I was a little bit agitated, right? Especially when the prosecutor objected under relevance. It's like my rights are irrelevant. How dare you object? So he got rebuked openly and blatantly for even objecting to my rights, right? So I rebuked him sharply. So that said, we proceeded into action, what have you, and because even prior to getting to that point, he was asking the police officer himself when he did arrive, pass on right? It didn't make sense to him either, right? And then the police officer had to reiterate things to him under the actual definition underneath, but nevertheless, that's the same context that I was asking, pass on right? So that said, that's where they technically got me, is because if you read the statute itself, did clarify and it did fit within those guidelines, but the title of the statute itself, pass on right, was misleading. So it should have also likewise been dismissed on that. So nevertheless, I took responsibility, so to speak. I conceded, in other words, but I was still alienated by the principal, right? So I paid the fine and everything else. You can see that on the Town of Leroy case. Now, after the Town of Leroy case, you'll see another case for the Town of Tonawanda. Not North Tonawanda, Town of Tonawanda. That case, I didn't argue it and what have you. But you can read about it and everything that occurred there, to where it was just a casual mistake, so to speak. Me trying to go through a light before it turned red, it ended up turning red. Me not being able to stop quick enough and what have you prior to it turning red. Therefore, I went through it, and I went through it slowly, but likewise safely, because nobody's going to run into me. Obviously, if everybody's watching traffic as it should, they're not just going to hit their gas pedals and ram into me, right? But a police officer was there too. Police officer should have taken note of the situation. But, well, you did this right in front of me. It's like, I'm not even going to argue it. I'm not going to get into it. Whatever. Let's go to court. And I paid my fine wave, even though it alienated me wave. It's like, whatever. But the difference is, if you look at the Leroy fine versus the Tonawanda fine, you'll see that there's a surcharge for one, not a surcharge for the other. Because the one where I didn't accept the plea offer and took it to trial, they had a surcharge, the Leroy one. The one where I took the plea offer, it didn't go to trial, they took all the money. There was no surcharge, right? That's establishing the principle of one of the reasons why I don't like traffic court. Because the bottom line is, they'll argue against you. They try to force you into taking a plea offer so they can keep all the money for the municipality, because they don't want to give it to the state, right? So if you take a plea offer, the money stays within the municipality. If you don't take the plea offer, you go to trial, the state gets a surcharge. That's where it comes down. So that I knew way back in the 90s, and maybe one of the things that I don't like about traffic courts. Right? So that said, now it leads me into the North Tonawanda cases. The first one in the list, I did a rolling stop in front of a police officer. I think I did actually stop, but nevertheless, I took accountability for him pulling me over and waving. If he would have issued me a citation for the rolling stop, I probably would have taken the plea offer no different than I did for Tonawanda and paid the fine. However, he issued me a citation for the rental vehicle not being inspected when I had a valid inspection sticker on it, to my knowledge. To my knowledge, meaning that It wasn't due for a few months per the sticker on the car. However, he said his system was saying it was past due for a few months. Whether or not that was the case, how would I be able to know? How would I be able to tell? Can't tell, right? So that said, it's like, okay, well, obviously not going to be my fault. And the police officer himself said it's not my responsibility. So I had to take it up with the rental company in what have you, which I did, right? Mailed in the ticket, not guilty, and everything else. Didn't hear anything until about 6 months later, right? So the rental company was notified of the circumstances. A few weeks later after that, I wasn't allowed to extend the rental on that particular vehicle because there was an open recall on the vehicle, which substantiates the principle that maybe something sketchy was going on in the background. Who knows, right? But nevertheless, I couldn't re-rent that vehicle, and they took it out of commission. Not only that particular unit, but all of those particular models of that vehicle throughout the company were taken off the road, right? So it's like, all right, well, that just gives more credence to why I wouldn't know that it wasn't improperly. Maybe it was, as the police officer said, it wasn't properly inspected. Who knows? But nevertheless, it still falls into the ramifications that it's not my responsibility, right? So then I get a twin, like I said, about nearly 6 months later or so, I get a plea offer in the mail I'm like, what? What's this about? So I forgot about the circumstances in its entirety, based on the fact that I didn't have responsibility for it, openly stated by the police officer and what have you. So it's all right, I'll call the court clerk about it. The court clerk told me, oh, well, it doesn't say that on here about it not being your responsibility and what have you. But here's a number for the city attorney. Called the city attorney, left a voicemail, didn't get a response, right? Get a second plea offer mailed to me instead, as if it's my responsibility. It's like, yeah, we'll go to the trial. I'm not paying for something that's not my responsibility, right? If it would have been the stop sign issue, yeah, we've probably taken the plea offer. In this case, no, I'm not going to commit perjury. Not my responsibility. But it's in your name, right? Emailing back over the court clerk and what have you. You can see the email correspondence in regards to that, I believe, on my website again, and under mycases.governmentwatch.us. Right? So that said, I ended up having to show up to court, right? Because I didn't take the plea offer. I was there under the principle that we're at trial. So, because according to the notice, as far as I'm aware, it said that, well, expect your trial date's going to be this if you don't accept this plea offer. I'm like, all right, well, there I am. I'm here for trial. I'm ready to argue it. So in that case, Luke Brown was the part-time judge at the time and what have you. I made 2 verbal motions to dismiss, right? One, based on my First Amendment immunity. Second, that it's not my responsibility to inspect a motor vehicle, rental vehicle, right? He ignored both motions, said that it was my responsibility, practicing law behind the bench, in other words. Couldn't cite the law, obviously, so I threatened him. I told him, well, if you violate my rights, I can remove you from your position. He gave a slant eye over to the city attorney. I don't know what his response was, but nevertheless, we set up a court date. I forced them to do it because I don't follow the Gregorian calendar. So trying to be dismissive of their time frames that they utilize. If you want me to be here, set the time and date. All right. They set the time and date. I was there only to wait through court, and finally when it was my turn for the case to be dismissed because the people weren't ready. In other words, the police officer didn't show up. Right? Now, I don't know who the police officer was, because I'd have to look through it, right? I might be able to find it. I don't know if it's on my website or not. I don't think it is. I think I only have the other things up there on it. But nevertheless, I'll look through and see if I can find anything in regards to that, right? I don't think I have the original ticket. I might, but I don't think I do. But either way, so carrying on to that. So that alienated me further. Now, this was post-COVID. Town of Leroy was pre-COVID. Town of Tonawanda was in the middle of COVID, I believe it was. May have been just pre-COVID a little bit. So COVID was in place, but mask mandates and what have you weren't in place. And a variety of things. Now you have with COVID and with the mask mandates, vaccine mandates, the attacks on the Amish and everything else, me being religious in nature, being the church, I'm like, yeah, this is a no-bueno situation. Right? Especially with the way how things were handled with the other the first case in the city of North Tonawanda, nah, I'm mad. I got a copy of the United States Constitution from Hillsdale College, read through it front to back thoroughly, a number of times, making sure that I wasn't misinterpreting anything, validated beyond a reasonable doubt that I was well within my rights to ignore any government agency if they violate my rights with impunity, because I can't utilize the terminology of public health, safety, and to violate my rights under any principle. So without a victim, they have no cause for action, right? So that said, I proceeded with, when I got pulled over in the city of North Tonawanda again, just literally a few months after the fact that the case was dismissed in the city of North Tonawanda with the first case, now they're pushing their luck. Now they're pushing my buttons, right? So now it's a matter of their power tripping and everything else. So I admit that I probably did go through a stop sign. I admit that I was probably going unreasonably fast through that stop sign. What I also admit is that I didn't do it intentionally because I didn't see the stop sign, right? So without intent, they have no criminal intent, right? And my mindset is to exercise my rights with impunity, mens rea, right? So they lack mens rea too. There is no victim, hence no crime. Based on my interactions historically, it's like, yeah, this is a no bueno situation, right? Especially considering the state seems to think that it has supreme sovereignty and can do anything it wants. It wants attacking the Amish and everything else, people under the religious principles and everything else, calling people white nationalists, racist, and everything else. It's like, yeah, this is a no bueno situation. This isn't going to fly with me. So I put my foot down. I exercised my First Amendment immunity there with the police. What's that have to do with this? And so instead of allowing me to explain it, they consistently kept over-talking me. Every time I tried to say anything, they kept over-talking me. Right? They kept trying to control the situation to evade their responsibilities. Called 911, provide my full legal name as well as my driver's license number to validate that, to mitigate their potential to arrest me for failure to identify. Ended up arresting me for failure to identify anyway, or even despite me actually identifying. So they kept threatening and coercing me and what have you, which is a conspiracy against rights, right? But I'm at fault because I have rights that are unalienable. So that went to court, and me thinking people are going to have common sense and understand the law, especially with body cam footage and everything else. When I went to arraignment, I made sure I had money to pay bail if I needed to. I didn't know how arraignment and everything works because the first time I've ever been charged technically criminally like that for anything. Even though historically I was arrested back in the early 2000s for an AOU third, aggravated unlicensed operator, AUO third, right? And that was because my license was suspended for failure to respond to a previous ticket, responded to that ticket, got it all wiped out. Got only a portion of my bail money back. I don't see why that occurred, but nevertheless, I wasn't jailed because I paid bail, right? But it's like, yeah, in that case, that also technically alienated me, because I didn't get all my bail money back, and a lot of other variety of things. Because again, even back then, it was a matter of perjury. You want me to accept a plea offer, come into court and lie about it, right? And it also historically, I actually did have my driver's license suspended because I didn't lie in court. I refused to lie in court. Were you speeding? Yes. You don't want to take a plea offer? No, I was speeding. Third time around on the 18th month, I could argue a couple of those tickets in a variety of manners and what have you, especially the last one on the 18th month, but I didn't. I was speeding. Go ahead, come after me. So my license, even with the judge arguing with me, was suspended because the judge said, "Are you sure you want to do this? Your license could get it suspended." It's like, all right, well, I did it. I'm taking responsibility for it. Even though the sign itself was covered in snow and everything else, and I wasn't knowingly speeding because I didn't realize I was within that speed limit, because again, the speed limit sign itself was covered in snow. And it was also early in the morning, and I also slowed down prior to being pulled over by an unmarked police vehicle. So, that said, there was no possibility for injury to person or property or what have you. I was already slowed down prior to even that unmarked patrol car coming out of the parking lot. that they came out of, because I watched them come. I watch my mirrors all the time, so I saw them pulling out. But it was an unmarked patrol vehicle. Unmarked, meaning not shown as being a police vehicle at all. Completely unmarked, right? So that said, it's like, all right, well, whatever. So my license was suspended for 6 months, so to speak, or revoked for 6 months. Could have gotten it back. Didn't get back until 2 years later, because I eventually moved into Akron, New York, and I worked where I lived. Technically, I could walk to work, walk to anywhere I needed to go, and everything else. So that's what I did. I didn't need a license. I didn't need a car or anything like that. Didn't own a car. No need to drive. Eventually got it back when I did need to drive, right? So that said, going back to the North Tonawanda, right? Now I get pulled over for that, going through a stop sign. Started my rights with impunity. My rights were substantially violated. Started with the court and wave that my rights were substantially violated immediately. Not something I learned from this or what have you, or something I watched from a YouTube video or anything. To me, it's common sense. My rights were violated. I read through the Constitution, understood Article 6, Section 2, long before I even knew sovereign citizens existed and what have you. So it's all right. So that said, that's when I posted what I knew online, right, on TikTok and what have you. And that's when I got more connected with people that are proclaimed to be sovereign citizens and knew a lot more case law, right? But again, in the police interaction, I cited Marbury versus Madison. Anything repugnant in the United States Constitution is automatically null and void of law. Something I was taught in grade school, right? First Amendment encompasses all three branches of government, free exercise of religion. So it makes sense. It's common sense, right? But obviously not common sense for the majority. So proceeding, they falsely arrested me and what have you, went to arraignment, had copies of my informal motion to dismiss to present to the judge as well as the prosecutor, because I knew I had to do that. And there's a variety of things where I just wanted to talk to the judge directly, but I knew I couldn't do that without the prosecutor present and everything else. A lot of various things I was researching at that point to see what I could do legitimately without violating procedure, so to speak, making sure everything was fair, right? So instead of being able to present the informal motion to dismiss based on my religious principles to them, that's when the prosecutor the following week tried to have me remanded, because after the arraignment, she emailed me discovery, to which I re-emailed my response back saying that there's nothing that the judge can do to protect you and everything else, because I knew what my rights were. I asserted my rights, right? So the judge can't, obviously, the First Amendment, Congress can't create a law that prohibits free exercise of religion, therefore the judicial nor the executive branch can enforce it. The judge couldn't do anything. The judge is there to just judge the circumstances, right? And they don't have the authority to violate my rights either, right? I just, in a few months prior, was in front of that same judge to where he dismissed the case because people weren't ready, and his other cohort there, the part-time judge, I threatened him literally just months prior to to fire him if he wants to violate my rights. So I thought it was in their public record already that, yeah, don't play with me, right? But they wanted to play, right? So she tried to have me remanded, institutionalized based on my email, where I validated beyond a reasonable doubt that not only did I know what a crime was, but she couldn't rely on the judge to protect her or anything like that. And she tried to have me remanded. It's like, all right, well, let's play this game. You just committed a capital felony offense in a court of law trying to kidnap me and everything else under the pretense I don't know what a crime is, but let's play it, right? Let's play it. Went to the forensic psychiatrist. Both of them ran circles around them. They deemed me incompetent when I couldn't be deemed incompetent. Article 1, Section 3 of the New York State Constitution validates that principle, as does Article 1, Section 11 of the New York State Constitution, where it refers to any person, firm, corporation, or government agency. So them being a government agency, the Department of Mental Health, they didn't have the authority either, but they wanted to act like they did. They wanted to act like they're knowledgeable. Violated due process in a multitude of ways in process. I was supposed to get the evaluation papers in the mail at least 2 weeks prior to the next court date, which never happened. Got a notice in the mail the day I got back from court on the 17th of October of, I think it was 2023. So got back to get a notice in the mail that, well, a note in my mailbox anyway, that they tried to just deliver certified mail to me that day, and I wasn't there to receive it, and that it was originally mailed out on the 16th of October, right? I was supposed to have that paperwork prior to the court date, 2 weeks prior. That way I could file a motion for a hearing. That wasn't done either, right? How could I file a motion for a hearing if I wasn't aware of what they deemed me as, if the paperwork wasn't presented to me, what have you? Extreme negligence and correlation to due process of law, right? So that's why I might eventually sue the city of North Tonawanda based on the substantial amount of due process violations and what have you, to reiterate to these public servants that think that they can do anything they want with impunity, right? Because based on that principle, I knew that they couldn't deem me incompetent and what have you. I emailed the court immediately as soon as I stepped out of it that I couldn't file a motion for a hearing based on the principle that I wasn't given the opportunity, and two, the paperwork that they said that was presented to me, given to me as a pro se litigant and what have you, that deemed me incompetent was given to me when it wasn't, right? So that's perjury in and of itself as well. So a multitude of perjured statements by the police, by the prosecutor, by the forensic psychiatrist and what have you. Yeah, no good all around. So I might sue them just to prove a point when it comes to this UV North campus case, right? So on top of it, the lieutenant that showed up during the one interaction, during the second city of North Tonawanda case where I was deemed incompetent and what have you, Officer Schwick, badge 203, Lieutenant Schwick at the time, I don't know what his current status is. I don't do research into what they do after the fact. I just kind of ignore it and carry about my business for the most part. But nevertheless, after I ignored that court order to have me remanded because it was unconstitutional and therefore void ab initio, I just ignored it, right? So basically told the court, if you want to come get me, come get me if you think you have the authority, especially given after not only the email was sent to the court after I was given that final order, but when I got the notice in the mail again about the psychiatric center being the one that sent me the certified mail and what have you, that's why I sent an email to the court as well as the forensic psychiatrist that was validated with the Federal Division of Civil Rights that it's a hate crime and everything else, right? So I knew what they were doing. I knew it was a hate crime, right? But they wanted to proceed in action anyway. So it's like, all right, well, if you think you have the authority, come get me, right? I don't care. It's only going to be further due process of law violations, and it's going to be substantiated on public record. So nevertheless, so I ignored the court order. I can still sue them in a court of law for everything that did it. I have all the information in regards to that. So that said, maybe a month and a half later or so is when suddenly, when I saw Officer Swick, badge 203 at Submasters in North Tonawanda, New York, that suddenly, after he got done eating, there's a citation on my car seat of a different rental vehicle. Now, my rental vehicles typically lock themselves when I leave. In that particular case, I know for a fact it did as soon as I walked away from it, but the key fob being far enough away from it, it automatically locks itself. This current one I'm in right now, I have to lock every time I get out of the vehicle. If I don't lock it, it doesn't lock itself. But nevertheless, that one did. But when I got out of the Submasters, picking up an order from Submasters, somehow a citation was on my front seat, neatly placed. How would it be in my car on my front seat, neatly placed, unless somebody broke into my vehicle to do it? So that said, multitude of laws being violated there throughout that citation, because to me, even though it seemed like it was a citation written in my name, I didn't read through it thoroughly, knew it couldn't have been a possibility because I didn't violate any laws or what have you. Thought it may have been something left in the vehicle from a prior passenger somehow, because I don't know, just in case I was absent-minded and I did something that I didn't recollect or what have you. Maybe I went through the glove compartment. I gave it a little bit of reasonable doubt to think of any avenue as to how it could have been there other than Officer Swick breaking into the car and issuing me a citation. So I saw that I had the license plate number of the vehicle on it, but it didn't make sense to me. So I threw it out at Panera on Niagara Falls Boulevard, right? Figured, well, if it's legitimate, I'm gonna to hear something in the mail. So I did hear something in the mail. Failure to respond notice from the DMV months later. Right? It's alright. Let's play this game. Got a copy of the ticket from the court clerk and everything else. Validated that it was by Officer Swick, badge 203. Retaliation, in other words. And everything else. Went to court, told him a number of times on public record that the traffic infraction never occurred. Everything else. Let's ignore it completely, and then ultimately, when they dismiss the case because the people weren't ready, ignoring my motion to dismiss on my religious principles, violation of due process of law again, that's when the city attorney, assistant city attorney Matthew, decided to, well, I want it on public record that he doesn't think the law is a part of him. It's like, all right, well, yeah, submitting fraudulent tickets under penalty of perjury and everything else to the court isn't a matter of you violating the law. No, it's my fault because you don't know what the law is, right? Corporate passing the buck games. So it's all right, well, the court case got dismissed, so I'm not going to do anything about it. I'll ignore it. Tick me off, but nevertheless, I'm going to ignore it. Then I start getting pulled over by the city of Batavia police for something that probably didn't occur. Oh, you didn't use your turn signal when turning. Yeah, I did, most likely. But nevertheless, again, I was in the turning lane. What are you going to do in the turning lane if you're not turning? Right? Common sense. So then village town of Leroy pulled me over. You're speeding. You're going 53 and a 40. Like, by the second second sign that I had the speed limit of 40, I was going 45. So if I missed the first one, it was because I missed it, and I live in the area. I live in Leroy. So maybe I may have misgauged myself, but nevertheless, it was a matter of I was slowed down by the second sign. Right? And it wasn't done intentionally, and again, it was a matter of there's no potential for injury to person or property or anything like that. So I told him, when he was trying to force me to give him my identification wave, I'm like, you're already committing a crime. Started getting him shaking like this. It's all right. 195.00 fish misconduct. So to mitigate the 195.05, I gave my ID, right? Under duress. Let him do his investigation and everything else. He came back shaking and everything else. Oh, I'm here to protect your rights and everything else. It's like, well, you just openly and blatantly violated my rights, and maybe I could go after the town of Leroy for it. Well, let's proceed. We'll have a cordial conversation. That was his fair warning. Got pulled over later with state trooper. Somehow in a different rental vehicle, one of the front headlights went out. Not entirely, but the high beam went out. High beam exclusively. So it's like, all right, well, why did he pull me over for just the high beam being out? But whatever, and especially considering in process of him pulling me over, prior to him pulling me over, when he got behind me, he saw that I had to swerve to avoid somebody from pulling out, going through a stop sign. In essence, he was stopped at the stop sign, but he went out in front of the stop sign, came out in the middle of the intersection, out in front of me, right, which could have caused an accident, which caused me to swerve around him. But instead of pulling him over for doing that, he pulled me over for my headlight. Then he started asking me a lot of questions about tax questions and what have you. It's like, are you guys targeting me by any chance, putting me in the sovereign citizen dynamic because you have no comprehension of law and I called you out on it a number of times? Alrighty. So I answered. Anyway, he didn't give me a citation or anything like that. I told him I'd get it fixed. Months down the road, I get pulled over for the town of Leroy police. Same issue with the front headlight. What have you. I had a cordial conversation with him. I told him I have the bulbs in the car to get the replaced and everything else. Because I did get them. With as new as the car is, he had only way to get replacement bulbs is to get them from the dealership. Cost me like $60 or something to get both a low beam and a high beam. But nevertheless, tried replacing it. Way it didn't work. It had to go through a work order process. Eventually, the Firestone was gonna say, well, it only can be repaired by the dealership and what have you, and you might want to take it in and get the vehicle exchanged. They wanted to keep the vehicle and everything else. It's like, yeah, guys, no. I'm gonna keep it running and what have you because it was another inspection situation. They had failed the inspection based on that. It's all right. Well, then I got home with it that night, and it was working. High beam. So whatever they did with changing the bulb or what have you, it worked. So despite them saying it didn't work, it actually did work because the high beam was working. So I went back in, got it inspected, and what have you, and it was working, right? So was it something that they're doing electronically, or was it an actual electronic issue with the car? It's a possibility. Who knows? But nevertheless, carrying on. So that Town of Leroy police officer could have been putting into perspective that, oh, well, he's a sovereign citizen. It's like, because I was putting into true perspective of the law. It's like, yeah, you have no cause for action and everything else. Well, what if all your what ifs is called conjecture? You can't violate my rights under conjecture of what could have. You have to worry about what did, right? So that said, that's what ultimately led me to getting pulled over by the village of Corfu doing a legal pass, right? A legal pass means I was within VTL standards, right? Passing somebody that was going slower than the speed limit, 5 to 6 miles under the limit, and it was fluctuating speed and what have you, so I passed them in a passing lane. In process of passing them, it seemed like they're accelerating, and with the patrol vehicle actually coming right in front of me, coming at me, it's like, well, I have to speed up to make sure that I make a successful pass without causing injury to personal property. Also part of the VTL, part of defensive driving tactics, as well as my education being in high school with driver's ed. Yeah, they have no cause for action. It was a legal pass. He pulled me over, issued me a citation for speeding, despite it being a legal pass. Told he didn't have authority. Variety of things. Oh no, whatever. Let's play this. So then eventually after that, because all the email correspondence and everything else with my rights being violated and everything else, to the sheriff's office and everything else, let's play this, right? Now suddenly there's a speed limit thing going on in the village of Leroy, and there's people that are speeding around without registrations and license plates and everything else, and a lot of variety of things in that circumstance. So it's like, are you guys just trying to set me up for failure under the pretense that I was trying to speed through Corfu, which I've never done historically, and why would I do it now? Right? Kind of thing, mentality, whatever. In other words, you're targeting me, right? Then I got pulled over by a state trooper for a seatbelt infraction, which I've never been. I'm not wearing one right now, right? I don't ever get pulled over exclusively for a seatbelt infraction. I've gone through a number of DUI and DWI checkpoints without wearing a seatbelt, not even attempting to put it on, and they never issued me a citation for not wearing a seatbelt. So why am I suddenly randomly getting pulled over for a seatbelt infraction exclusively if it isn't retaliation, especially from a state trooper when I sent an email in the week or two prior advising that I'm going to file a complaint with the New York State Police about it, the hate crimes division. So now I'm being pulled over by a state trooper, right? Trying to intimidate me. Retaliation, in other words, further retaliation. All right. Filed my motion to dismiss. Got ignored. Judge put bias and prejudice on the record. Filed a multitude of motions in that case. Told them specifically I'm not going to show up to the trial because they have to address the Brady motion, the constitutional challenge motions, and what have you. And not long after, I get arrested by UB North Campus. Same principle. Well, you think the First Amendment allows you to go through, make a right on red when it's safe and to do so? Well, he didn't use that, but he basically is what he would have. And so I cited all the laws ignored it completely, and then tried to criminalize me for exercising my rights with impunity, committing a multitude of perjury in process as well, right? Constantly perjuring themselves. But I don't know what a crime is, right? So that's what this video is about, is going through all the cases that I've been dealing with and all the various pullovers by a lot of police officers because they're butthurt because they don't have any authority of the church. They want to act like I'm doing criminal actions when all I'm doing is I'm living my life freely. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. First Amendment encompasses all three branches of government. Article 1, Section 3, as well as 11 in the New York State Constitution allows me to do it, as does Article 15, Section 290 of the Executive Code, Article 2, Section 2 of the New York State Civil Rights Code, Marbury v. Madison, Miller v. United States, American Jurisprudence on Constitutional Acts, Title 18, Section 241, 242, 249, 2381, 2382, 2383, 2384, 1201, 1512, New York State Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, 3, 8, 11, 12. Then likewise, New York State Penal Code 10.00, 55.10, 135.00, 135.05, 135.60, 135.65, 195.00, 485.05, and a multitude of others in regards to harassment, fraud, perjury, and everything else, because they think they're the embodiment of the law when in reality they're just violating the law openly and blatantly with impunity. Shalom.